Hello, I'm Travis Klein, Assistant Director of Career Services here at Northwest Missouri State University. And today we're going to talk about job search. And when we talk about job search, we don't just mean jobs, we also mean internships because those are just a different kind of job. And what we find a lot of times here in career services is when students will come into the office or they'll email us and they're asking about resumes and things like that, what they actually are looking for is help with job search and finding those opportunities and then making a resume, a cover letter, application materials to go along with it. So this presentation kind of talks about job search overall, the importance of being focused with it, some steps for success, and then just some general advice. So hopefully this will get help anyone out there thinking about looking for a job, looking for an internship, whether it's a part-time job, a summer job, whether it's an on-campus job, an internship, a post-graduation full-time job. All of those different things apply to job search here. So starting off with the Career Services Office, we are always happy to answer any questions that you have. You're welcome to come into the office. We're on the Northwest Missouri State University campus in Admin 130, open Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. So you are welcome to come in and ask those questions, get some assistance during that time. You're also welcome to email us if you're away from campus, say you're back home for the summer, you're doing an internship away from campus, you've graduated and moved away from Maryville. Happy to help in all those situations and anything else. And you can email just our general account. That's career@nwmissouri.edu. And then we have a lot of resources, links to job boards, things like that on our website. That's nwmissouri.edu/career. So certainly happy to help, whether it's in person, through email, through the website, whatever works best for you. We want to help you with this process. So one thing that students struggle with, and not just students, but everybody honestly struggles with, is jobs and internships can be really difficult to get. There's a lot of competition out there. A lot of people are applying for open positions. Sometimes, if you're looking for a very specific type of employment or a very specific location, that can make things even more difficult. So the whole process can be a bit overwhelming. So the idea of this presentation is to break it down into more bite-sized pieces and then give you tips for each of those steps to make it more approachable. So again, thinking about the competitive nature of the job market, average job in the U.S. receives over 200 applications or resumes per single job. That's for a full-time job. Internships can be in the thousands, depending on how competitive it is. So it is a very difficult thing. Because of the number of applications that come in, the average recruiter spends a very short amount of time looking at your resume, looking at your application materials. Under 20 seconds is the average. So very quick look at real quick. So in our resume presentation, which we'll link to here, there's a lot about customizing your resume, making sure it's error-free, making sure it's easy to read, those sorts of things. This is why, because the jobs are so competitive. There's so many resumes coming in. They don't have a lot of time to give to review those. So you need to make sure yours is as strong as possible so that you stand out in that very quick first look that you're going to get. And then of the 200 people that typically would apply for an open job, about 2% or about four people get selected to come in for the interview. So it can be like trying to be a needle in a haystack. It can be very difficult. But again, a few things you can do throughout the process to make yourself stand out, to make sure that you're as well informed as possible, you've got as strong of a resume as possible, all that sort of stuff, that can make it much more likely for you to be in those few people that do get selected for the interview, because that's really where your time to shine is. So typically, and this says a student job search, but really a typical job search for anyone is typically you create a resume, you apply for every job that looks interesting, you send that same resume to 50 different companies, 100 different companies, hope that you make a good impression, and then you wait for a phone call, right? It's not the best way to do it. It's really not a great process. And there's a lot of reasons why it's a very passive process. So for one, you're just kind of throwing things out there. Think of it like you've got an empty glass bottle, you're putting your resume in there and you're throwing it in the ocean. You're hoping that somebody finds it. Really not going to have a really high level of success if you're just spraying and praying and just applying for every job that seems like you're even remotely qualified for it. There's no conversations or interactions with the recruiters, with the organizations, with the folks who are doing the hiring along the way. You're just kind of applying, and hoping for the best. So really not the best way to do it. And if you're sending a general resume, generally that's not going to work out very well for you. Customizing and tailoring that resume to the job description like we talked about in our resume presentation, will make a huge difference. It's going to show that you are prepared for their job, that you know about what they're looking for. Sending a general resume does not do that and definitely does not make you stand out versus all of those other resumes that they've received for that same position. So, not a great approach. It doesn't work. Let's ball it up. Let's throw it away. Let's do a few more steps, but make it hopefully much more successful for you. So a better way to do it first is to set goals. And every time I do this presentation in front of an audience, I say this and people will roll their eyes, they'll groan. But really, if you don't have a reason for doing this, it's hard to put the work in. So it may be that you need a full-time job so you can afford to live somewhere and to buy groceries. That's a really good reason to need to do this. It might be you need an internship to graduate from your major. It might be that you need summer employment so that you have, money saved up for during the school year. Whatever it is, you need to have a goal for why you're doing this process and then make a plan based on that. Once you've got that goal and the plan set up, you know what you're looking for, you've kind of got your parameters set, then it's a really good idea to research the industry, the companies that are in the players in that area, job titles that you might be interested in, different things like that. And this isn't months and months, semesters worth of research. This is a few 15, 20, 30 minutes online doing some looking around, seeing what's out there, going to job boards, seeing what kind of jobs are out there within your search parameters of what you're thinking of. So just a little bit of research goes a long way, but that's definitely an important part of this as well. Then you want to try and network and interact with organizations as much as you can. You can do this in person by coming to events like our career day that we do every semester at the Hughes Field House on the Northwest campus. You could do this through a mock interview day event through Zoom. You could do this through virtual events, which are available online. A lot of communities do different things like that. However, you want to interact with people, you do it through LinkedIn, however you're comfortable with it, but interacting, networking with organizations, reaching out, having some sort of contact with them makes a huge difference in how much you know about them, how comfortable you are with them, and then how successful you are overall in this process. Then you want to tailor your resume and application materials to that very specific position using the job description as the guide. Then apply. Make sure you follow all the rules because sometimes there are very specific rules to applications to cut down on those numbers that they get. And then instead of just waiting for a reply, you want to make sure you follow up. You're preparing for the interview. You're getting ready for the next step. So we're going to go through these 6 steps kind of individually, kind of break them down even further. But this is, again, twice as many steps as that passive process, but a much higher success rate, a much more likely chance that you'll get to the next round if you follow these few extra steps. So more work, but definitely more reward in the process as well. All right, so the first step, setting goals. Again, seems super basic, seems like such an easy thing to do, but a lot of times people don't take the time to actually think about this. So think about what you want from the job, from the internship, from the experience. Are you just trying to get experience to build your resume? Are you just trying to make money? Are you trying to prepare yourself for whatever's next? Whatever that is, think about what your objective is, what you want to get out of this. You also need to think about things like geographic location. Are there certain companies that you like, job titles that you're drawn to, things like that? Talking to professors, talking to other students, other alumni, other connections that you have to ask about that can be really important. More than likely, one of these things is really important to you. It might be, I'm going to be in Kansas City, so I need to find a job in the Kansas City metro area. Well, you can build your search around that geographic location then. It might be, I want to work for this specific company. So what kind of jobs are available there? What kind of skills are they looking for in their jobs? It might be, I want a very specific job title, like I want to be a data analyst. So what are the companies that have data analyst positions? What are the kind of duties that go along with that? All that sort of thing. So having one of these things to build your search around makes things much, much easier. And you may have several of them. You may have a geographic location and a job title, and then be open to other companies. You may have a geographic location in a company, but be open to job titles. Like any combination also works, but you need to have at least one of these to kind of base your search around. Looking for a job anywhere, doing anything for anyone is really hard to search for. You're not going to get results for that. You also want to think about things, especially for internships and things that aren't maybe permanent positions. Where are you going to stay? What are the salary and benefits package look like? Do they provide insurance? Things like that. Transportation. Are you going to be able to go to and from? If you're in a major metropolitan area, where are you going to park your car? Does it cost to do that? Do they provide parking? All that sort of stuff is things definitely to think about. Again, more with those temporary positions, but also with the full-time ones as well. If you take a job in downtown Kansas City and there's no parking, where are you going to put your vehicle? Are you going to do public transportation? How are you going to get there? All those sorts of things. So again, other considerations to think about when you're setting your goals and things that you can research in step two. And then you want to kind of make your plan based on that. So it's like, okay, I want to find a summer internship that's in accounting in the Kansas City area. That's what I'm looking for. Also want to find somewhere to stay. So those are the things that I need to search for. So making a plan based on your goals or what you're actually looking for makes a huge difference. Then you want to move into the research step. So again, this isn't a huge amount of time, but it's very important for you to do. So learn about the industry. So if you want to do accounting, who are the players in accounting in the city that you're looking at? Are there large firms? Are there private firms? Are there places that specialize in taxes, if that's what you want to do, or people that do audit or whatever it is? And again, use your network, talk to your faculty members, talk to your classmates, talk to people you find on LinkedIn, on different social media sites, things like that. Go to the accounting meet the pros that we do every semester, those sorts of things. That's a easy way to learn about the industry. Ask those questions to find out more about it. You can also find things like business journals. You can follow, industry leaders or experts on social media. You can do online research. Go to the companies that you're interested in. Read the About Us pages. Read the reviews on sites like Indeed and Glassdoor that people have put who have worked there in the past. All those sorts of things can be done very quickly and can give you a good amount of information about an organization, about an industry, or about how that works in a certain area that you're looking at. There are also governmental tools that you can use, things like ONET Online and the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They have something called the Occupational Outlook Handbook that we link to on the Career Services website. I'll put a link in this video's description that takes you to the page that talks about that. That's a good place to kind of learn about overall, like what does that industry look like in the state? What does it look like in the region? What does it look like in the country? What's the average starting salary? That sort of stuff. Lots of that kind of research can be done through government tools that everybody has access to. And then again, you can link up with professionals through social media using LinkedIn. That's a really valuable tool. We have a whole presentation about LinkedIn that kind of talks about setting up a profile and maximizing that. You can use other sites like Twitter and things like that as well. But LinkedIn is absolutely a really good investment of time and energy to potentially start making those connections and do some of that research as well. All right, social media specifically, I think is something a lot of times candidates don't think about when they're looking for jobs, looking for internships. There is a lot of information available for you on social media. You just have to seek it out. So think about the stuff that people are putting out there. If there's a company that you're really interested in, what are they putting out there? Are they talking about things that are very job specific? Are they talking about things that are fun? Are they talking about their employees or giving back to the community? All those sorts of things can really be helpful looking at their social media sites. Again, using LinkedIn for that as well, exploring groups within the industry. There are sometimes subgroups within education or within business or within sales or within, whatever. So there's probably professional groups that you can join, even if you just join and see what other people are saying. That can be very valuable to teach you about the industry, about what's going on, what the trends are at the moment. Um, and then also, again, using Twitter or X as a different resource as well. Following professionals on there can certainly be helpful. And then look at other sites too, things like Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, different things like Snapchat or TikTok. What are they putting out on those things? Like those are the platforms, whatever ones you're actually using, like what are they putting out on those? What are they talking about? Is it a company culture that you would be comfortable in? Is it an organization that you continue to be drawn to? Or when you start looking at this stuff, is it kind of like, ooh, maybe not? All of that is a really good way to kind of get a gauge of what's going on, what's happening, what's a priority for the company, where their values are, make sure that they match up with your own. That's super important to do. Networking is also very valuable. Sometimes who you know is just as important as what you know. So, depending on what research you look at, as many as 90% of open positions are filled because of networking, because you know someone. So that's a huge thing. So keep in touch with other students maybe who are graduating and going into similar jobs than you're interested in. Keep in touch with your faculty members, all those sorts of things, any professional connections that you make tend that garden so that you can, get those crops when you go to graduate and look for that. Anytime you have a chance to meet with somebody in your industry, that's a good idea. So that may be, again, a career services event like Career Day, an online event like Mock Interview Day. Your department or school may do mixers or things like that where they bring in employers. Go to those events if they do that. Those are very valuable. It's a small amount of time that you have to invest, but what you can actually get out of that could be a job where you make thousands and thousands of dollars per year. So very much an investment and very much worth the time. So certainly recommend that you do those sorts of things. Anything like that that you can do either online or in person, very valuable. If you are looking at a certain metropolitan area, Kansas City, Omaha, Des Moines, California, San Francisco, California, whatever it is, a lot of metropolitan areas have young professional groups that are free for you to join. They may do networking events, whether they're in person or online through Zoom or through Microsoft Teams or different things like that. If you can go to those, that's a really good way to kind of get plugged in to kind of the working professionals in that younger age who are in that area. Can be a really good way to start making connections wherever you want to be. So, even if you're here in Maryville going to in-person classes at Northwest, but you want to, go to Austin, Texas, if they have a young professionals group in Austin that does a monthly online mixer, attend those, get to know those people so that when you're going to actually apply for the internships or jobs, you have some connections. The person you connect with at one of those events might be the hiring manager or might be one of the people you would be a coworker in those experiences. So definitely, again, worth your time. And then again, using LinkedIn, using other online resources to connect with professionals, definitely worth it. Again, networking is one of those things. It's an undervalued skill, but people who are strong in networking, who are able to build those strong professional networks, they are much more successful at finding work experiences, whether they're internships, part-time jobs, or full-time jobs. And career services can help you get started with that. Once you find those connections, those companies, those job titles, and you find something you want to apply for, it's really important then to take the time to make really strong application materials. When we say application materials, we mean the resume and the cover letter and references. Those are the three things usually that are asked for on an application. Really important for you to look at that job description and create a custom resume and cover letter for every position you apply for. And I know that sounds like a lot of work, but it will pay off. A general resume is not probably going to be successful for you in most cases. So taking the time to customize your materials makes a huge difference. And again, we go into detail about that in our resume presentation. We have some really good resources for you that you can use to make those custom resumes, but definitely recommend creating a custom resume and cover letter for every job that you apply for. And again, that job description is going to tell you everything you need to know. That's their like Amazon wish list of the perfect person. So the more you can make your resume and cover letter match that job description, the more likely you are to be successful. So use that job description as a guide. Keep a copy of it as well. Whether you save that as a PDF, you copy and paste it out and put it into whatever to keep it. Because if you do get drawn in for the interview, that job description is also really good to look at right before you go into the room. So you know the types of questions they're probably going to ask and what they're trying to get out of that as well. And then you also, you want to take the time to do this to stand out versus everybody else. You want to make sure that you show them you've done your homework, you know about who they are and what you do. It also helps you in an interview setting to ask next level questions. Instead of tell me about this job, it's I see that this job does this. Can you tell me about more specifics about X? Which is a much better question and much more going to stand out to that employer. It's also really important if you're making custom resumes for every job. You may be applying for 10, 15, 20 jobs. Have as many people as possible look at that resume and cover letter as they can. You want to make sure it's error-free, that it reads well, that there aren't simple mistakes, things like that, grammatical errors, things like that. So having your professors look at it, having your classmates look at it, having career services look at it, those are all good ideas. The more people that look at it, the stronger the document's going to be overall. And what you'll find is as you continue to make these resumes, the first one's going to be really difficult. The next one will be even easier. And then every additional one, it'll get easier as you get used to the process, just like anything else. All right, the actual application itself, you want to try and go through the company website if possible. Now, that doesn't mean don't use job boards. Job boards are great. Sites like Indeed and Glassdoor and even the job board on LinkedIn, things like that, those are great places to find jobs. But if possible, it's good to go through the company website and apply versus a third-party site or a job board. You may not always be able to do that, but if you're able to do that, that's the best way to do it. So try and do that. And again, we can kind of help you try and find that if you're struggling to find where to do it. Make sure you read and follow all directions. Sometimes students will get really frustrated when they're applying for jobs and they have to submit a resume, but then most of the things that are on the resume are also on the application and they have to retype those. You can copy and paste them, which will make your life much easier. But there's a reason that they ask all those questions. Because again, if I'm getting 200 applications for a single job and I can take a quarter of the people out because they don't do the application properly, my job just got that much easier. So there's always a reason for directions. They might be a little bit of a pain to do, but make sure that you're jumping through the hoops as you're asked to do that. That's an important part of the process. If they give you names and contact information, things like that, it's a good idea to jot those down. Applications will usually go away once the application window closes. You may not be able to find who that person is again. So, as you're applying, keep track of that, just so you're able to follow up, things like that, who you're talking to. It's a good idea to kind of keep track of all those things as you apply, especially if you're doing it for multiple jobs. And then again, if they have dates, processes, things like that, it may say, this position will be posted until the end of October. Interviews will be early to mid November, and then we'll make a decision by the 1st of December. It's good to know that so that if you're following up, you're not asking what the timeline is if they've already told you. So, and again, if you're doing multiple applications for multiple jobs, knowing the dates and details for each one, keeping a simple Excel spreadsheet or something like that, definitely a good idea, just so you know what you're actually doing. Following up is also important. This is something a lot of times gets skipped. You don't want to be too aggressive, but you also don't want to seem like you don't care. So a written note or email is a good idea, typically within a week of the closing date. So if you apply for, say, an internship over Christmas break, but it doesn't close until February, you don't want to be sending follow-ups and things like that before it closes. So keeping track of those sorts of things, knowing when to follow up, that's a good idea. If you are going to send something, you want to make sure that you're polite, you're positive and thankful. You want to be short. You don't want to waste their time with page upon page upon page of email. So don't waste their time. Get right to the point. Be concise. But then you also want to reinforce skills. So maybe talk about 1 or 2 points, talk about how excited you are, why you're a good candidate for the position, what made you excited to apply for it. All those sorts of things are going to be things that an employer is going to want to hear. But short and polite are definitely the important parts of a follow-up. And then you want to make sure, again, just like the resume, just like the cover letter, it's professional, it's well edited, there's no errors. Don't use text speak. Make sure you're using full words, things like that. That will make a big difference too, just again, on the overall impression that the employer has of you. And then hopefully, if this goes well, you'll be called in for interviews. Things like mock interview day can be really helpful to get you comfortable with the interview process. That's a chance where you get to actually do a 30-minute interview block with an employer. 20 minutes is the actual interview, 10 minutes of feedback. We do mock interview days throughout the fall and spring semester, broken up by major, but any student is allowed to do those. Certainly recommend students practice through mock interview day. That's going to be really helpful, again, to get you comfortable. Just like anything else, the more you interview, the more natural it seems, the more comfortable that it is. Again, having that research done, knowing who you're talking to, what the organization is about, what they prioritize, that will make the interview much easier because you don't have to figure all of that out on the fly. You can kind of have that already. Glassdoor particularly is a really helpful site for interviews because you can find interview questions for larger organizations. So if somebody's already done an interview with a big company that you're interviewing with, you can see the types of interview questions that they got, their overall impressions of the interview, things like that. Probably won't be the exact questions you'd get, but it would be, they asked a lot of behavioral questions. They asked situational questions. They gave us, a problem to solve, things like that. So knowing that in advance is much easier than having to react to it on the fly. Always important for you to have a few questions prepared to ask the interviewer, things that you want to know about. So things like the timeline moving forward, the next step in the process. Those are always good things to ask about. But hopefully your research, your prep for that has given you some things you want to know more about that are more natural questions. And again, I would strive for those kind of second level questions, not tell me about the organization and the position, but I see this about the organization position. You guys really seem to like to give back to the community. Would this position have an opportunity to do that? That type of question is going to have a much better impression with an employer versus tell me about what you do at your company. So things like that are really important. We will have an interview presentation that's available for you. I'll leave a link to that as well. But that can be really helpful as you go through this and get ready for interviews. Again, mock interview days are the best way to practice, but just kind of knowing what's expected, knowing how you're going to answer, having a few stories ready will make a huge difference in how comfortable you are with the interview and usually how successful you are with the interview. We do have a lot more information available on job and internships, on interviewing, on resumes and cover letters, basically all of this information on our website. That's nwmissouri.edu/career under that student tab. Certainly recommend that you check that out, find more information. Of course, you can always come into the Career Services office and we'll answer those questions for you as well. And then WiseDoc is a tool that can be helpful. Again, if you're making custom resumes for every job you're applying for, WiseDoc lets you log in with your Northwest email and password. You can put in the information, pick out your template, and have a really good looking resume and cover letter in a very short amount of time. So certainly recommend that you use WiseDoc. If you come into the Career Services office for resume help, we're probably going to point you at WiseDoc at some point, but you can kind of check it out on your own as well. And that's a really good platform to learn more information about that. Also, as you start this process of looking for jobs and internships, following Hire a Bearcat is a really easy way to start seeing positions that have been sent to us in the Career Services office. That's just at Hire a Bearcat on both Facebook and Twitter. So that's available for anyone to follow. We vet the jobs, make sure that they're not scams, not things that cost for you to apply to. But again, really good ways for you to kind of start that job search process, see the types of positions that are recruiting Bearcats. And then, of course, our events are also a good idea as well, whether that is career day, mock interview day, all those sorts of things. And then again, we are happy to help. So admin 130 here on the Northwest campus, if you want to come in for help, Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. If the campus is open, the office is probably open. You can email us, career@nwmissouri.edu. And then we also have our website, nwmissouri.edu/career. So that's a little bit about job and internship search. Again, hopefully this helps kind of demystify the process, make it a little bit simpler. If you do need any help, please just let us know. Again, come into the Career Services office or email us. We want to help with this process. We want to see you be successful. So thank you and have a great day.